welcome. My name is Amy Bowser-Tennant, the genealogy reporter, and today we're talking about which DNA test you should take. Before you test, you do need to consider some things. You may find out by doing a DNA test that you are not biologically related to someone you thought you were. That can be very difficult. You may find you have biological relatives you never knew about. You may find you do not have as much of a specific ethnicity as you thought you did. Other people may be able to reach out to you, even if you have your privacy settings a certain way. Sometimes people can still get a hold of you. There may be implications if you use some third-party websites, such as GEDmatch, when law enforcement can use your DNA to locate offenders if you do not use the option to opt out of your DNA being used for law enforcement purposes. Now, we're not going to discuss that in today's video, but if you have questions, you can ask them in the comments below. There are three types of DNA tests used for genealogy. We have the autosomal DNA test, and that one can be purchased at Family Tree, MyHeritage, Ancestry, 23andMe, Living DNA, and they run different prices. The normal cost is somewhere between $79 and $99 US, but a lot of times you can find these on sale for as low as maybe $49 US. Mitochondrial DNA, that one is only sold by Family Tree DNA. And the last one is Y-DNA, also only sold by Family Tree DNA. Let's talk about using autosomal DNA for genealogy, because most of us, at least in the beginning, start out with an autosomal DNA test. These are the tests you see commercials for, Ancestry and MyHeritage and so forth. They're used for confirming and supporting your family research that was done with traditional paper trails and so forth, overcoming a brick wall in your genealogy. That's when you've stopped at a certain person or couple and can't go back any further. Identifying birth parents and unknown parentage, discovering and connecting with cousins, or learning about your ethnic heritage. Any of these reasons, you're going to want to go for an autosomal DNA test. Y-DNA testing for genealogy is great, but Y-DNA testing can only be taken by a male. And it gives you a look at the father's 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 father ancestry. Okay, so it's just that one direct paternal line that this DNA test is looking at. It's particularly helpful for if you want to identify an unknown father or an unknown paternal ancestor. So this could even be used for, you don't know who your great-great-great-grandfather was, excuse me, on the paternal line, then this is one of those tests you could take. If you want to join a surname project, if you're overcoming a brick wall in your research, especially further back, this might be a good test. If you are female and you can't take this test, you would need to reach out to a male from the direct male line in question, and they would have to take the DNA test for you. Using mitochondrial DNA is also a great option for specific research questions. Mitochondrial DNA can be taken from a man or woman, and it looks at the mother's line. So this type of test could be used to determine the maternal relationship between two females. It might determine the ethnicity of the maternal family line. You could overcome brick walls in your research if that brick wall was in the direct maternal line. And it can differentiate between two different maternal possibilities for an individual. There are 5 reputable DNA testing companies that I recommend: Ancestry DNA, MyHeritage DNA, 23andMe, Living DNA, and Family Tree DNA. You see, all of them offer autosomal DNA testing, but only Family Tree DNA offers Y and mitochondrial DNA testing. It should be noted that some companies allow you to upload your test results from another company to their site. And that's really important when you're doing DNA testing to kind of swim in all the pools, if you will. So for example, I might choose to do an ancestry DNA test, and when my results come in, I'm going to upload those to MyHeritage DNA. And by doing that, I am now swimming in two pools. And there's a little more to that. And again, we're not going to discuss that today, but you can ask more questions in the comments below. Now, autosomal DNA testing, different companies offer different tools, little extra things, if you will. And some companies have a lot of them and some companies don't. This will likely not make a lot of sense to you if you are very new to DNA testing for genealogy. However, at some point it might. So I'm just going to briefly go over these. Ancestry offers the predicted relationship. In other words, it might tell you, hey, this is a close relative. Maybe this is a first to second cousin match or a fourth to sixth cousin match, something like that. In fact, all the companies offer predicted relationships. Shared centimorgan amounts. That means how many centimorgans are you sharing? When you share a lot of centimorgans, you're more closely related than if you share only a little bit of centimorgans. And you see here, Ancestry, MyHeritage, and Family Tree DNA all give you shared centimorgan amounts. Next is the largest segment, and that's by MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA. And that's a little more complicated. We're not going to go into that today. The number of segments that you are related to a person is helpful, and all the companies give you that. X matches, again, a little more complicated, but 23andMe and Family Tree DNA give you an X match that might come in handy for those more complicated cases. And lastly, the chromosome browser, which is only offered by 23andMe, MyHeritage, and Family Tree DNA. Now, each of these websites will include, with your results, a match list and an ethnicity report. Understanding your ethnicity report is probably the most confusing thing for individuals. Listen, ethnicity reports are only estimates. Ethnicity reports will differ from company to company. Your siblings, even your full siblings, can have different estimates. That is expected. Your ethnicity report will change over time, and that's because as the algorithm gets better and better, as the reference population gets bigger and bigger, they're able to narrow down those ethnicity results, and so it will change over time. Lastly, you may have a known ethnicity, okay, that you know exists because of paper trail and card-carrying Native American members and so on and so forth, that does not show up on the ethnicity report. It does not mean that your ethnicity report is wrong, but there's a reason why it's not showing up. Let's talk a little bit more about that. When a company offers an ethnicity estimate, what they're doing is they have what's called a reference population, an extremely large group of individuals who represent different ethnicities. And some ethnicities are not represented as well as other ethnicities. You send in your SPIT. They analyze that and pull the DNA and then compare it to their reference population. Again, each company will have their own reference population, which is why it will slightly differ from platform to platform. And then they give you this estimate. Now, the estimates are pretty darn good on a continent level. For example, if they say you're 99% European, you can guess that you're probably 99% European. If they say you are 57% African, you can pretty much guess you're 50% African. When it goes down onto a country level, such as the difference between being X% German versus X% French, or X% Congo versus another African country, then it gets a little more complicated. And migration comes into place, historical migration and so forth. So don't get too hung up on the country. That one is going to be less accurate, okay? Look at this family tree. here on the left, you've got two parents, a red parent and an orange parent, and two parents, a yellow parent, and a yellow parent with just a sliver of Native American ancestry, which is noted in the color peach. Now, when each of these couples has a child, you see that red and orange had a child that was half red, half orange. And the yellow couple had a child that was mostly yellow, whatever that ethnicity may have been, and a sliver of Native American ancestry was passed on. Now, when these two individuals in the center, the red-orange individual and the yellow-yellow-peach individual, marry and have a child, you see that the child is now taken an assortment of ethnicities, but guess what? For whatever reason, the amount of a Native American from the individual's parent doesn't show up. There was no Native American detected in this individual. Now, if a sibling is tested, maybe several siblings, one of them may show up Native American. It doesn't mean that the person testing who doesn't show up isn't Native American and the other one is, okay? It means that that particular amount of DNA was quite far back, only a little, and that individual just happened to not get that part of their parents' DNA. You can see another example here in this green-blue couple and their offspring, and the purple couple and their offspring. And then we've got our shades of green and blue person marrying our purple person, and how many ethnicities are there in their descendant. And then when we take both of our very multicolored individuals, our yellow, orange, and red here on the left, and our purple, blue, dark green, and light green on the right, you get children that have numerous ethnicities. And most likely, that's you and me, made up of a multitude of ethnicities. So before you unlock the power of DNA testing for genealogy, ask yourself, what do I want to find out? Because that'll help you make the decision about which test to take. And then you can determine which of the companies would you like to test with. And are you okay if you find out something unexpected? Are other family members going to be okay with unexpected results? And finally, you can always consider the financial cost. Maybe wait for a sale to go on so that you can get a little bit off for DNA testing. And that is what you need to know before you purchase your DNA test. Thanks, and have a super day. Bye-bye.